so you can have a sense of my kind of work. Andrea already did an awesome presentation. I will just say that I introduce myself as a reform attorney or attorney in recovery, because attorneys are taught to fight for a cause, and my cause is creating a safe space where we can have constructive dialogue and reach mutual gains and address the interests of multi parties and everybody who is involved. But I help people, individuals, groups, organizations, governments, and use negotiation and consensus building and strategies to advance their interests and improve business and working relationships and deal with conflict more effectively. Um, so these are some of my pictures of my life before COVID. So that's up to 2020. If you see the picture on the top right of your screen, I'm almost behind a table and next to a lady in a red dress. And in front of that table is the Pope, the current Pope. So I had the honor to be in a dialogue table with the Pope in 2019. And I can tell you more of that story. And he's also in the bottom of the picture on the bottom of the screen. Um, so this is my work, the kind of work I do. I have several pictures here, and this is my work with during or getting out of COVID when I was working with the Peruvian government, and we were running all over the country because I was in charge of like maybe 120 dialogue tables because there's a lot of social unrest and conflict and dialogue tables in Peru, and the government has an office that depends on or belongs to the prime minister office, and that's where I had the opportunity to serve for during a transitional government. As you may know, we have had like 8 presidents in the last 10 years. Anyway, so I will give you a sense of my work and what I do and how I address it. But in general terms, foreign investors may face diverse challenges in host communities across and cross-cultural situations or from cross-cultural situations to blocking coalitions that can prevent successful implementation of foreign investment projects. And cross-cultural stakeholder assessment or engagement and consensus building processes can help to address this matter. In Peru, many investment projects have been delayed or blocked since 2003, I think, because of the way some investment projects were managed. These trigger social conflicts and have caused several projects to be frustrated. Here are just some pictures to give you an idea of how people protest around here. And I can say more if you want me to later on. But there are many situations, and this is still, I don't know, 22, 23, 2023, and we still have ongoing situations. And none of these projects that I share with you have been implemented yet in Peru. In general, governments around the world want to receive as much fresh capital as possible to improve their economies and living condition of their people. And multiple stakeholders deal with the challenge of balancing environmental protection and economic development. So companies usually tend to overlook or generalize cultural factors. And overlooking cultural factors when managing negotiations and relationships with local partners and local communities can risk the successful implementation of a project. Foreign investors might face difficult situations since such as the one encountered by Stone Container, an American-based foreign investment company in Honduras, which reached an agreement with the Honduran government to develop an extensive forest management program and harvest 320,000 hectares of pine forest for 40 renewable years. And after the agreement was publicly announced, local communities around the country, as well as environmental groups and activists, raised their voices and protests on the streets. And at the end, the government canceled the negotiation and Stone Corner project was not implemented. Many companies use this approach of decide, announce, and defend. So investors and governments negotiate and make decisions about the investment project privately, reach an agreement with public officials who grant authorizations and make a public announcement, and then defend it if when we have encountered oppositions. Even if a project can benefit the country, the economy of the country and its population at large, this type of approach can cause the formation of blocking coalitions that prevent the implementation of a needed investment project. So the way an investment project is introduced to local communities and other stakeholders can have an impact in its future implementation and development. So the announcement of an investment project might bring an investment. If anyone have their mic open, maybe would be good if you mute it. An announcement of an investment project might bring excitement to local communities because of potential jobs opportunities and development, but also can result in a degree of uncertainty. And members of local communities may also fear that their lifestyles will be threatened. And this fear can lead to anger and potential social conflicts. So when people feel threatened, they may fight for survival with an either-or mindset or a win-lose mindset and trigger this tribal effect, us against or versus them, and conflict can escalate. So cultural dimensions can explain how local communities may respond when feeling threatened. Individualistic societies tend to fit with a universalist approach to the application of law. So they believe that the rule of law is applicable to all as equals and believe that the people with fear or anger should and will go to the court system to protect their rights. But collectivistic societies, which are most of the developing countries, tend to fit with a particularist approach to the application of law. So people believe that the rule of law is applicable to particular individuals differently, and that some people have more benefits than others based on predetermined conditions. So they tend to distrust the court system, the legal system, and when facing uncertainty, fear, or anger, they tend to apply power-based approaches. So they go on rallies to the streets and get with the purpose of getting political attention so the government can save them and protect their interests, their needs, their concerns, and aspirations. So for instance, the government of Costa Rica was considering another project of stone container in that country. When the company found the proper location to construct the facility, environmentalist groups launched a media and a legal campaign to prevent the construction of the facility due to the concerns of the potential damage to the environment. Then a new government came to power and facing the situation, named a commission to analyze the investment project and render a decision. So the commission encouraged stakeholders to provide feedback and requested written submissions of the recommendations, and the commission made a decision, render a report, and approve the project, but requested a joint committee with the government representatives.
Lewis, I think you might be able to mute everybody because there's something happening in somebody's.
Yeah, I did it. Thank you. And actually, I have the recycling track that is coming, and it has a funny music. So It sounds like an ice cream truck, but I'm sorry. It will come. It will go soon. So governments should design processes to consider multiple stakeholder needs and concerns, any interest, and engage them well when considering an investment project. But there is no reason why private investment companies cannot design processes to better approach multi-party negotiations in a host country. So a foreign investor can decide to engage multiple stakeholders in a consensus building process to make a decision whether or not to invest and how to do it best. In Latin America, Latin Americans are very uncertainty avoidance and do not easily accept change nor tolerate risks. So resistance to a project can be due to a situational factors and prior experiences can affect perceptions of the people. So local communities may perceive that foreign investors, foreign companies, come to take their wealth of their land and damage it, with economic activities leaving them worse off. So distrust of local communities in foreign in companies might be a common belief, a cultural tendency of uncertainty avoidance, or the result of situational factors. But these can prevent the successful implementation of an investment project. So what to do about this situation? And to inspire trust, one must shape expectations as soon as you can. So foreign investors can have a chance to shape the local community's expectations and perceptions by engaging the communities in direct, honest, and open dialogue to address the distrust issue. The distrust issue. For instance, stakeholder engagement process with a mutual gains approach. That's what I do for living. Foreign investors should open dialogue to have members of local communities voice their views of risk and grievances and find ways to satisfy their concerns and aspirations. So, how or what to do, or what do we do this, or how can they do it? First, manage reputation up front. So, build trust and manage connections. Connect with local trustworthy leaders to share interest in implementing an investment project. Learn about the interests of locals. Have a sincere curiosity. Know the influence circles and do that kind of work on the ground. Stakeholder engagement, you start with a stakeholder assessment, obviously focus on interest and what are potential options, what might be the alternatives of not participating in a dialogue process if you are going to do that as a stakeholder engagement process. It's also important to do joint assessment, and one way to do it is with a joint fact-finding process in which you define what information you have, what you don't have, what do you need, and how do you create information that is trustworthy for all parties. And also, you can use contingency agreements if you have different foreseen of the future. And obviously, joint problem solving a citizen's choice. Cross cultural awareness is important. Think about better than no deal alternative and take draft agreements to constituents. Then I will say a little bit more about this. And foresee obstacles that project implementation may face and design dispute resolution mechanisms or grievance mechanisms. So we say that we need to think of predictable surprises. Kind of things, what kind of things can happen in order, or that can prevent that the project evolves or is implemented. We will almost always have the tension between establishing foreign investment projects in developing countries and impacting the environment of local communities. But foreign investors or companies and local communities can work together to reach mutually beneficial agreements that take into consideration the interests, needs, concerns, hopes, fears, aspirations that are important for each stakeholder, even if there are huge cultural differences among the potential negotiating parties. there is always a chance to bridge that gap, and we need to be sincerely curious to learn about and from each other. So, paying attention to cultural issues, respecting differences, learning about the local communities, honoring local cultures, appreciating other identities, acknowledging emotions, and framing a foreign investment project as a mutual beneficial opportunity, and engaging stakeholders in decision-making process will build the trust required to have positive working relations between and among foreign investors and local communities. And countries will welcome more foreign investment projects and improve the conditions of their economies and the living condition of their people. So, for a community to welcome, for instance, a mining investment project positively, the community has to believe, and not only believe, but they need to feel that it will be much better off than it was before the investment project arrived. So the project must be perceived as a good neighbor and a contributor to local development, and it must not be seen as a risk to local tranquility or as a triggering factor of fears or worse, as a promoter of destruction. So to foster or shift perspectives, first we need to understand those perspectives through a fair process of shared understanding, and then I will say something about dignifying dialogue. But the key is first to address the fears and concerns, and then we can talk about the value or the potential benefits of the investment projects. So, in general terms, this is a consensus building process that I use. So, somebody says, well, we need to engage with communities, or we want to call a dialogue, a dialogue process. So, somebody says, we need to do that. And there's a convener, somebody who will be the one who decide, let's move, go ahead with this process. So they reach out to a mediator, and the mediator talk with the convener. They develop a protocol of questions, and then a stakeholder assessment is implemented. And a stakeholder assessment is doing multiple interviews, anonymous interviews, in the sense of we go around and interview people, then we will write a report, but the report will not say this person say X, Y, and Z, but you say this segment of the community think or believe or have this interest or concern. So you don't attribute names to statements. So after that, you gather all that information and you design what would be the best process to address these needs and concerns. And if a dialogue process is the result, well, you establish ground rules, decision rules, a working plan. Normally, the mediator is going to be the facilitator of that process. And then the convener and the facilitator make a decision of should we go forward with this process. Did we identify the right people, the concerns, everybody's involved, or if there's something that will not make a really good process. So make a decision, convene the parties, and the parties get together. And when the parties get together, first they need to decide what their mission, what they want to accomplish. And if they have the information, they need to make informed decisions. So they decide what information they have, what they don't have, and what do they need. And they do a joint fact-finding process in which you establish or select or agree upon an expert or a panel of experts to address those questions that you need to get answered to make informed decisions. So you gather and you collect information, you do a study or any other information gathering, and then you have that information, and then you can sit at the table properly and have or seek joint gains, most likely with a mutual gains approach. And then you can reach an agreement and then you can decide how to implement those agreements. That's general, in general, how a consensus building process may look like. I always use this quote because I always quote Peter Drucker, and then you will see another quote that I have. But Peter Drucker used to say that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And in my world, that means that it's useless to have the right processes or strategies if we have the wrong paradigm or the wrong culture or meaning the way of thinking. And so I say that we need the right paradigm or a mutual gains paradigm, which is a different way of thinking, in the sense that generating mutual gains between a company and the people affected by its business or activity is not only possible, but it's essential to build long-term trusting relationships. So there are basic principles for that, like engage the parties in the solution, seek active participation. So do what we do is joint problem solving. So don't make decisions for people or for the best of people. Is you make decisions with the people and focus on the most important interests and needs and create options for mutual gain, meaning create options that satisfy as many interests as you can and act in a way that build trust and relationships. And I always talk about respect with double T because one T is for treatment, treat me with dignity as another human being, and T of transparency. So don't lie to me. Walk the talk. Say what you are going to do and do whatever you said you were going to do. So our paradigms or our way of thinking uh, create or produce an attitude. And either or thinking or right or wrong thinking or blame games and confrontation produce winners and losers, and not very that's very troubling. So that's a picture of a former prime minister and the governor. The governor is the one sitting, um, regarding a mining project that never happened, but the interaction was, I don't know if arrogant is the word, but it was very confrontational. So we need a different way of thinking, a different way to approach people. This was another prime minister, and the guy with the kind of orange color hat is a community leader. And actually, that's the meeting that was the first meeting between these two parties. And to the second meeting, that's where the Pope, the current Pope, show up in that meeting with other people from the church in Peru. So a new paradigm, we need a new paradigm to engage better with people. And not only to collaborate, but also to connect as human beings. And to connect as humans is key because we all have the need to feel understood, appreciated, and respected, and have a sense of belonging or affiliation and not feeling excluded, and a sense of autonomy. We don't want decisions to be imposed on us. And I have a colleague that you all know who once we were having I don't know if it was a conversation or she was delivering a presentation, and I quote her, and I always quote her because she says that if you are authentic and genuine, your heart is open. And when your heart is open, you connect with people. And that's Andrew O'Neill. And I have another colleague, Merrick Hoven from the Consensus Building Institute. He says, our minds, meaning our brains, make such gaps between us that they can only be crossed by holding hands with the heart and the mind. And Merrick also wrote a piece about dignity in dialogue, and it's called Merrick Arc. It's not Noah's Ark. Um, and he talked about four conditions to have a dignified dialogue that allows the parties gain perspective, recognize humanity of the other, and wants to listen to the other. And these four conditions are acknowledgement, agency, reciprocity, and clarity. And this means basically that when we talk about acknowledgement, we need to ask, are the people affected feeling that their concerns and aspirations have been deeply heard and acknowledged? An agency is, do they have a sense of agency in terms of how they will solve their problems and on what terms? So participants feel that they have a meaningful sense of influence and control over the process. And reciprocity deals with the question, are they experiencing and contributing to reciprocal engagement as a constructive exchange, both in words and actions? Are they contributing and building together the engagement? And finally, clarity. Do they feel a sense of clarity about the process itself? That is, do they understand what will come next? Can they access the engagement fairly? And how will those steps address their deepest concerns? I will tell you a little story. A process that I work in 2018. I almost live in Ecuador. That's in the north of Peru. So you have Peru and you have Ecuador. And between these two countries, we have had several battles, or we have been on wars like 3 times. And because of a piece of land. And in that area, there was a mining company developing some activity, or trying to develop some activity. So a peace treaty was signed in 1998. Now we are amazing friends between Peruvians and Ecuadorians. But I was called by an indigenous community in Ecuador to help them talk with a mining company that they were doing some work there. So this is a story. I will briefly share with you the story of a consensus building process that began with a stakeholder assessment and that resulted in an agreement to do joint exploration. And this project is a Warinsa project, and even two presidents in Ecuador have said that this is the way we need to do mining in Ecuador. So the story is that in 2004, this local community, this indigenous group, signed an agreement with a mining company. And in 2006, the agreement was the company purchased a piece of land. Those 26 or 20 something pieces of land. This is a 3D picture, and it's a huge area. But in 2006, the company was expelled from this area by the communities. And in 2017, the leaders of this community wanted to talk with the company to ask the company, hey, give me my land back, the land that I did sell to you in the past. And in November 2017, they came to Peru because this foreign company have offices in Peru. And 10 leaders of this community came, and they wanted to talk with the company. And the company called me and say, Luis, these people are coming, so please help us to engage in some constructive dialogue here, and do some of this mediation magic that you mediators do, right? So they came to Peru, we had a conversation. They understood that the company cannot give the land back to the community, but they were willing and open to have a dialogue process to address the potential opportunity of doing business or doing exploration in that area. So the community, these 10 leaders, they said, okay, but we cannot go back to the community. without our titles, our some documents that we have our land back. So please, can you join us? And I was telling me, can you go with us to the community and explain what we have done here and the conversation we had? So that was November 2017, and in January 2018, I went to Ecuador. I went to this community. So I traveled from Lima to Quito, 2 hours, then 8 hours by car, and then got to a little town, and then to a little tiny airplane of 4 people to get to this community because they at that time they didn't have access, they didn't have any roads. So I got to the community and I start having conversations with them. And my purpose was to understand their needs, concerns, fears, hopes, aspirations, and do this stakeholder assessment. Even though I said that stakeholder assessment should be done with like private interviews, they didn't want to have individual interviews with me. So I did more like a focus group. I gather people and we talk and we talk and we talk and we talk. So then I share what a process, a dialogue process, what a dialogue process can look like, and share some ideas, some how we engage in dialogue. And well, I went there twice in January and February. I went back and forth because I came to Lima to talk with the manager because they were saying, well, that's great. Dialogue is great, but before we do anything, you need to give us our land back. So in March, I had the opportunity to go to Canada to talk with the board of directors, few of the board of directors of this company, um, to share what I've been talking with these people in these communities in Ecuador. And then I wanted to understand how the decision-making process of this company was, how it was, in order to decide or to have a better sense, is it possible to give this land back to the people or not? What their real interest might be. So I got a response. So the people said, we can have a dialogue process to talk about these titles and these pieces of land. And in March, I went back to Ecuador. I ran into this guy called Vicente Sakim. He was the leader of a larger organization that gathers many local communities. And he said, so Luis, so you're the mediator. And what are you doing here? Well, I'm going to the community to explain the conversation I had in Canada. And he said, well, you didn't ask for our organization or our institutional authorization to get in. And I was like, oh, I didn't know I had to do that. Even though I knew they exist, and the people in Canada said, we want to this organization as well. The local community never told me I had to ask for permission to this institution, to this federation of communities. And I said, well, I respect your authority, your hierarchical organization, institutions, and I will not get into the community to give them the good news I was bringing, but I would like to meet you later on because I'm just coming back from Canada, and there's an envoy from the company who wants to have a conversation with you and explain what what they want to do here in Ecuador. So this person came. He asked permission to get into the community to explain what the community wanted to do, and it was framed as we want to do a joint study to understand the value of the subsoil. So what do you have underneath of your land? And they wanted to do it with the community. So they wanted to do joint exploration, basically. And in May 2018, the mining company, the two local communities where the project was, um, where the project wanted to do the exploration. And this federation, we came together and we start a dialogue process. We formalized a dialogue that started like a month before from from the previous gathering. So we established some ground rules. We established like the governance of this process. We were going to have a technical commission and the commission that was going to do the formal decisions. And that was in May. And in June, um, we got into the community and explained to the community that a dialogue process was beginning, and the next month, some representatives of this community with the federation called PESHA, like PSHA, visit the the Ministry of Agriculture to explain the problems with the titles, with the deeds, the property titles, and explore together possible solutions of this problem. And at the same time, the company start a census to identify the needs of the community, and that was also supported by this federation or the PSHA institution. So that was July. And in August, we went back to the community to explain how the process was going. And then we explain also what the government institution said about what we can do with the titles, or the company, what the company can do with the titles, and then talk with the community and ask them if they were willing to receive the titles or the deeds, um, with the conditions that the government were saying. The situation is kind of tricky because there are two little communities, and one of the communities is built by former community members of this other community. Because when there was, in the past, there was just one community, and few families decided to sold these pieces of land to the mining company. And when the rest of the community realized that that happened, they expel them. They reject them. They say, go away. So they went away and they built another community. So the original community was the legal one. And the new community formed by the expelled people, this was not a legal entity yet for the Ecuadorian government. So the government said, if the company wants to give the land back to the community, they need to give it to the formal community, the legal entity. And that was a conversation we need to have with both communities. And at the end, they said, yes, let's go with it and give us the land back, even though you are going to give the land to the another community. So then a formal letter from the company confirmed the company's decision to transfer the ownership of the land. And in October, we start having conversations with the Ministry of Energy and Non-Renewable Natural Resources, because the community wanted to tell the story of this dialogue process that the community and the company were having, and they wanted to invite, they wanted to have a meeting with the minister. At the same time, we were facilitating workshops to identify and gather information regarding like a diagnosis of or assessment of needs and problems in the community that would serve for the elaboration of development plans for the benefit of the community if we reach any sort of agreement in the future. So in November 2018, we had a meeting with the Minister of Energy and Non-Renewable Natural Resources. Uh, The Vice Minister of Mining was also present in this meeting. They explained, they shared the story of this dialogue process and explained that the company wanted to give the land back to the community, and they wanted to invite some of these ministry representatives. And the same month later on, there was a big event in the community in which the company made a donation of this land back to the company gave the land back to the community through a donation. And it was with no conditions, meaning the company was kind of brave enough to say, we will give you the land back because we want to heal our relationships. This is a kind of leap of faith. We want to have with you further conversations about what we want to do here, but to start having that conversation, we need to be like in good terms. So they gave that land back to the community. And the following month, in December, the company present to this high-level commission of the dialogue process a proposed MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, for reviewing for the company, for the community and the PSHA, the PSHA organization, to review and analyze this in a following meeting, because the company wanted to do this joint exploration. And after that meeting, there was another meeting, and then in January 2019, the company was invited to the community, so they signed an agreement, this memorandum of understanding, to do joint exploration. When I tell this story, the basic, I use this story, obviously a shorter version, to explain the difference, or as an example of difference between position and interest, because the position of the community was, give me my land back. I own this land. And the company said, I cannot give you this land. You sold that to me. I'm the owner now. And the real interest of the community was to that their ancestral ownership and their dignity as Shuar community. Shuar is the national, the indigenous, how do you call that? They are called Shuar. It's a Shuar nation. So they had the belief that a Shuar without land, it doesn't deserve to be a Shuar anymore. It was an issue of identity. The land is not like, for many people, we purchase assets, like an apartment, a house, a vehicle. The land is part of who you are. It's like if you sell your land, it's like you cut off an arm. So the company understood that the interest was that this was the interest. We need, as a community, we need to have the land. And the company realized or understood, and the board members were curious enough to understand the perspective of the community. And then they said, well, we don't really care about the surface of the land. We just want to know what's underneath of it. So they realized they didn't need the land. It was not worthy for them to own the land and not being able to access to the subsoil. So that's why deeper conversations help to realize this, and that's how they reach an agreement after all this long process. So as mediators, we can help reframe conversations, change the course of a conversation, turn blame games and debates on arguments into constructive dialogue, and help find better ways to engage and integrate multiple interests. So, two last slides. So to build trust at the personal level, We need to show up authentically. So this is me, being genuine and human. We need to practice radical transparency. So be clear about your intentions, share information freely, admit mistakes promptly, keep your promises, say what you do what you say, so maintain integrity, extend trust first, so be willing to be the first to trust. Be a world-class listener, show genuine empathy and care, and build shared experiences. Because trust is built in togetherness through both challenges and successes. Finally, to build trust, we need to be genuine and connect with, if we talk about investment projects, we also build trust, being genuine and connecting with others as humans. So we need to have the right mindset, the adequate dynamics or interaction, and use the right processes to listen and engage multiple parties with multiple and diverse interests. So that's what I have to share.